What up, fam? This is how we start it. Got Eric on here, Eric Kruger. He is in, you're graduating this year?
Yep. So I'm in the third year of the Doctor of Physical Therapy program. We're going the Mayo Clinic.
Boom.
Yeah. No.
I have a lot of friends graduating.
Yep. So finishing 6 months left and ready to get after it.
Awesome, man. Congratulations. And on the other side, we got legend herself, Coach Bo, Michelle Bolin.
Got my Hartman shirt on.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I don't even have one of those, and that's my father.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't think you'll fit into this one, so
No.
Can't share.
No, that's okay. Sharing is caring in most cases.
There you go.
All right. So we're gathering around today to talk about online stuff, and among other things. Eric, I know you had a gang of questions.
Yep.
Coach Bo, I don't know if you got a gang of questions, but
I always got questions.
I figured what we'll do is we'll alternate back and forth. I can go till so we got an hour and 15 minutes to make this happen. Where are we going to start?
I can leave it up. I can lead it off. We'll start big picture, work our way down to the minutia. So, yep, I like it. I use my hands a lot, so you're going to see a lot of hands going on. So Zach, talk to me about your overall philosophy. How does it differ between if you're working with someone in person to working with somebody online? And it can be first with the rehab side being on my end and then going to the training and performance side or wherever you would like to start.
Okay. Good question. Philosophy is really the same. It's the methods are different. I still operate under the similar model of I'm trying to intervene in as many ways as possible that are non-invasive. So I don't know if you've ever seen my little doodad that I have where it's like performance health, you have social support, movement, nutrition, distress management, and sleep, all being ways we can intervene. That still reigns true whether I'm seeing someone in person or online. And it's about manipulating all of those variables to help meet that person's goal. Okay. Now, the big difference between online and in person is I can't touch people online. So as I tell my attendees in Human Matrix, what you gonna do about it? So what I have to do is I have my baseline assessment that I perform in person. I have to find surrogate testing that gives me just as much information. And a lot of times if you pick the right test and you know what you're trying to achieve and manipulate within the body, it's really not that far. It's not that different, I would say, from in person, from an assessment standpoint. When I'm intervening, if we're talking about restoring variability, the difference is in how I can coach. I have to be a verbal coaching machine online. And it's been a really good challenge, and it's helped me grow a lot because I've had to find the best cues plural, to try to elicit the adaptations that I'm trying to get. But the test retest is still there. I'm still driving similar adaptations. It's just the methods are slightly different. Okay. The rehab. Training. I only have a few clients online for training as of right now, and that's about all I can tolerate at this point. I like working with them. But for those people, I still do the same things. We still do an assessment. I still will treat it just like I would a movement consultation. But the only difference is I'm taking whatever we decide that person needs, and then I'm just trying to reproduce those same things in as many different contexts as possible. For example, if I have someone who can't extend the hips on either side, I am going to reinforce it with some type of reset. I'm going to reinforce it with a squat variation that I choose. I'm going to reinforce it with upper body variations by maybe choosing half kneeling, tall kneeling to drive hip extension. I'm going to reinforce it in the conditioning. Right? Maybe I'm going to be doing sled pushes for repeats as the conditioning tool to drive hip extension. So it's how many ways can you expose that person to the thing that they can't do? And my hope is that elicits the changes that we're trying to get them.
With those changes that you're looking at getting, what were the surrogates? You mentioned surrogate testing.
Mm-hmm.
What were the biggest changes you made to the testing for the online clientele that you're seeing?
It's been a lot of trial and error.
Okay.
Good trial and error. I can show you exactly what I do. Let me just pull up a template.
I think that was my biggest thing is I wanted to go through like the biomechanical like testing. Like, do you have people walk? Do you look at their gait? I'm sure you look at their infrasternal angle.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do like a toe touch or a straight leg raise?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Well, we have to look at the big things the big decision-making tools that we have to drive. I can't make many decisions off of gait necessarily because there's too many moving parts going on. So I don't know why a person's going to be doing something. Now, if someone's hurting and they're seeing me and there's a specific movement that hurts, I'll most certainly look at that. I'm using that more, though, as a comparer pre- and post-testing or pre- and post-intervention than I am to base decisions off of. But Coach Bo, what are the big things that we need from a movement standpoint when we're working with people? Like, what are your 4 or 5 big things that you're trying to change right from the get-go? Because I know we are on a similar
page. Like when I'm assessing someone and like about to look at like if I'm assessing someone, I'm definitely going to have a conversation. I think like subjective information is important, like what they think their limitations are, what they think their strengths are, so you can maximize their strengths. And that's a lot of psychological stuff to me. And like you said, reinforce limitations, but I'm going to go infrasternal angle when I look at things, and then I'm going to go hip extension first.
Cool. Those are my big 2 as well.
Got it.
Love it. Well, you know that, though. You too.
Big test right there.
Yeah. Those would be my first 2 decision makers.
Yeah.
I also would look at shoulder external and internal rotation.
Yeah.
And then I look at the shoulder flexion. So let me just pull up my, whatchamacallit, assessment template. Here we go.
Oh.
Boom. All right. Now, I have squat and toe touch. I don't look at these on everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I have been looking way less at them, in fact. My big things that I look at are these seated tests. So I got trunk rotation and shoulder horizontal adduction. Basically, that's telling me what can the scaps do on this rib cage the person has. So horizontal adduction, can the scap abduct and internally rotate? Trunk rotation, can one scap adduct and externally rotate and the other abduct and internally rotate? Hip rotation, I don't base many decisions off of that. It's more of a comparator at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's that infrasternal angle. Always look at that. But I often don't retest it because it's kind of challenging to get an appreciation for if it changes online.
Yeah.
From what I found, unless it's dramatic. Because you're having people measure this, and more often than not, they don't get it perfect. So you kind of have to guesstimate it. This, I would say, this area is what needs the most work in progress for me. Shoulder flexion, I used to test that in hook lying, but I found that it's easy to cheat, and because you can only see one view at a time, some people will go overhead and they'll do this and it'll look full.
Yeah.
So what I do instead is I go with the standing shoulder flexion. Then I can look at, is the scapula upwardly rotating? Are they hitting like a 170, 180? And then are they doing any compensatory activity downstairs to make that happen?
Do you mean, this may be a silly question, but like, do you have them like possibly take their shirt off if they're like a guy so you can see that a little bit better?
Yes. Yes, for sure. Or if a female has sports bra, I'll
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Shoulder external rotation is pretty easy too. That one I tested hook lying. It's this bugger, shoulder IR. Because like some people can have full passive IR, but then they don't get that far actively, or they're doing some funky things with their elbow. And I just haven't found the best surrogate test for that yet. Like the Apley scratch, there's too many movements going on there. I don't know. That's one that I'm not super pleased with at this point. Although I do see changes. I don't know if you use anything, Coach, or Eric.
No, not online.
I'm using similar to what you're using right now. I've struggled with pretty much the same ones you have. Shoulder IR has been really big, especially if you have them in hook lying. It's really hard to see where that scapula is moving. Mm-hmm. That's been a big one for me. So just to cut back to the infrasternal angle, so if a person tests as a wide or a narrow infrasternal angle, are you just making your coaching decisions off of that first test moving forward, knowing that, like you said, online, you may not see the changes that you might see in person? Are you keeping that as the continuum, or is there a time period then when you'll reach back in and be like, I'm going to check the ISA again to see?
Really, the infrasternal angle just tells me what breathing strategy I need to utilize.
Yeah. Okay.
And where I should start their arm positioning to capture lower ribcage position.
Okay.
What I really use is, which are my big test retests, will be half kneeling to get hip extension. And then I really like this is a test Bill's been using. Wow, I misspelled that. Wow, that's embarrassing. Standing propulsion.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, which is basically looking at someone, and it's almost like the wall drill. Remember the wall acceleration drill we used to do?
Mm-hmm.
We still do. It's basically that. But you're looking at how well one person can flex the hip while maintaining hip extension on the contralateral side.
Gotcha.
That's been really good. And I think not only that, but if you're uncertain, like, are they getting hip extension? I'll look at that. I'll look at a split squat. I'll look at just single leg stance. Anything where one hip has to extend, the other hip has to flex maximally. That's, to me, the best approximator online of if you can gauge if the pelvis is dynamic or not.
Okay.
So that's it.
Okay.
So you just have someone get in front of you with a camera and tell them to get into a half kneeling position,
mm-hmm.
and then you look at them from like a side angle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
And I'll have them change multiple angles often when they're doing stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Going a little bit deeper into that,
mm-hmm.
I know for a while you've been using an active mid-stance test.
Mm-hmm.
Have you still been finding that useful, or have you been kind of straying away from that?
Dunzo. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I hadn't seen it for a while.
Rest in peace, AMT. So you know me. Well, I think and I have to give credit to Bill. I always do have to give credit to Bill. But I question the utility of looking at single plane specific things, mm-hmm. because I don't think we ever operate in a single plane. When Bill and we did a cadaver dissection in August, I think it was, and you look at the muscle fibers, and there's no such thing as a fusiform muscle. They're all curved. We likely move in curves. We likely morph and adapt in curves. And I think that's grossly or dramatically influenced my treatment as well, mm-hmm. in the sense that I'm trying to combine as many directions as possible at once to elicit a particular adaptation. It's never just hip extension. It's hip extension with adduction, or with a little bit of abduction, or I'm doing hip extension with hip flexion, or so on and so forth. Okay. Did you have a similar experience, Michelle?
Yes.
After the intensive?
Yes.
Maybe after Human Matrix.
Both combined. I mean, I had them pretty much back to back.
Yeah, you did. They were in the same month.
Yeah, it was a solid month right there.
Yeah.
What's your subjective questionnaires look like, and do you like include subjective information in terms of like retesting and building that into like your program?
So subjective. If it's a movement consultation, I ask 3 questions because I would rather have a conversation with someone as opposed to just filling out these specific questions. There's 3 questions. Sorry, there's 3 questions that I asked. I just saw a text. I should have turned my do not disturb, and it made me really laugh. But I ask 3 questions if it's a movement consultation, and I basically say, "What am I seeing you for? What makes it better or worse? Blah 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 blah. Have you had any treatments for this in the past?" So I know not to do the same thing, or just to kind of see where they're coming from. And that might dictate my education a little bit, because if I see that they've been seen by certain practitioners, I may have to debunk or de-threaten some of the things that they've said, because I see a lot of people who have seen a lot of people. And then the last thing would be any medical history. That's the movement consultation side of things. The performance or training is a little bit more in depth. I got to look at exactly what I ask because it's a lot more questions, but it's really to kind of encapsulate the model of social support, sleep, those types of questions.
And then having a good referral system, which I'm sure you do for all that stuff.
Yeah. So with the goals, so I ask, what are their goals? With the goals that they've mentioned, what does success in those areas look like? So I think that's probably how you bridge the gap from what you need to do to where they want to go. And that will also give you some KPIs to give someone. So if someone is seeing me for fat loss, they're going to say success is I look good naked and I have X amount of body fat. And okay, then we need to start measuring things along those lines. Most of the people who I see are post-rehab and want to feel better when they move. So the KPIs are a little bit less. It's more, hey, how are you doing with your day-to-day stuff? And is this workout going okay? Then I ask what type of training facility we're working at, so I know what constraints we have. I ask, what's your diet? How's your sleep, hours and quality, medical history, and anything else they want to know. So it's just trying to build as many of those habits that will support their goals as possible.
And then related to like their goals, especially in fitness goals, how are you like building testing into your program? Like say someone says like they want to get stronger, whatever that means, or their aerobic fitness. Are you doing like open sets periodically? Are you going for distance on like a bike periodically?
That's typically not my population.
Yeah.
I mean, legitimately, most everyone is post rehab, or I've seen them for a movement consultation, or they've been training with other people and it hurt. So I want to see if we can build a movement foundation.
Yeah.
Most of my clients just aren't there yet. If like I have one man who I'm training right now, he's really into playing a lot of different sports. He does like hockey, basketball, all of this. So I always ask him feedback, hey, how things go with that, just to see if there's any change. It's definitely an area I could probably do better in, but it also doesn't seem to be relevant for the current population that I have.
Yeah.
Is there any big testing that you've been looking at, Michelle, on that end? I guess throwing it back to you.
Yeah. So like I'll deal with maybe a little different population than Zach. So I'll try to build testing into like programming. So I'll put like open sets in. So like keep the same weight and see how many reps you can change from like, week 1 to week 4, or you have 3 minutes on whatever mode that you choose. And of course it's going to keep the same mode, and how much distance can you get in 3 minutes, things like that. Just like, I don't want to say safe, but we're not like max repping or anything, but we're still working towards like a goal or an outcome. And I make sure I like recess that like periodically.
Are you using open sets then to kind of just gauge endurance in a specific lift?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great idea.
I mean, you could also like argue that like that's like a psychological factor too. So if someone's building fitness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Include that, yeah. So, I mean, if you wanted someone's goal is specifically like max effort strength, of course you could like 1RM test that and build that in there. But
yeah, it's just a little bit dangerous if you don't have someone to spot. Most people, I don't know who, like the people who you're working with online, but most of mine train alone.
And most of the people I train, like, it's not really like a necessity. That's
no.
So.
Yeah. No, most of mine are more relative strength anyways at that point. So it's
exactly.
It's never going to be, unless I haven't had a powerlifting client in a while. So it's more, I've been looking on your end, same thing, open sets, distance. I know we've been programming some kind of like a push pull and then some kind of lower body, just how many can you accumulate in a certain amount of set period of time, kind of something you set up. So you hit, if you're hitting a lower body exercise, if you're hitting something that's a push pull type thing, you can see what they're building over time within a set time period as well.
Yeah.
Just something rough. I mean, it's nothing ideal, but just the measure of what they can do from a whole body perspective.
Yeah. And you could also do that in terms of like when you create circuits for like high volume days or like conditioning days, you create a circuit and then see how much like time it can take that person to do it. And that's also an indicator of some sort of progression.
I could dig it.
Yeah. Switching it back to you, Zach, on some of the things you've been talking about, creating behavior change. Have you found anything in particular that has been working well with patients or clients that you may only check in with, once or twice a week versus someone you may see more often in a more typical type setting? Have you found anything that would be beneficial for a post-rehab client, kind of your more clientele at this point?
Online, I would say it's actually easier than it is here in Susanville, where I'm at right now, because I work in an insurance clinic, insurance-based. And I think the reason why is because when people are paying you cash, they have a much greater incentive to execute what they need to execute.
Yep.
So sometimes that can be the biggest thing you can do to create that behavior change. I will say this though, I think with a lot of the people who I've worked with, establishing just a consistent exercise program, that to me is probably the number one habit forming thing that I've probably been able to accomplish with some of the people who I've worked with online.
Yeah, I think that was probably my biggest mistake early on, is just like doing too much too soon, like giving them 3 days a week when realistically they probably only could have managed like 2 days a week. So I completely agree with that one.
Okay. I found that too. It's the exact same I had, Michelle. It just, you start off, your expectations are different than what the client's perceiving as both hard work and the amount of time they're willing to invest into the program. And I think that's been the biggest change for me, is how can you hit them with what they want in 2 days a week instead of 3, maybe, just because you have someone in a post-rehabilitation setting that may not have that time that we're looking on our end, just because we're constantly in it. It's a whole perspective shift that I've had to kind of see too, of that person's coming to you not being in what us 3 do on a daily basis, whether what we're reading, who we're talking to. And then you have this person that's just coming into the new setting that is completely different than what we have. And yeah, that's been a big shift for me in the last year, is setting the expectations for getting that patient what they truly want, and really how much time that actually takes is kind of up to them almost. You know, I mean, they can commit to you 3 to 4 days a week. You can sell that as, you know, that may in turn over the long term get them, I don't want to even say faster results, but ideally we'd say more optimal results, but we don't even know that anymore. Looking at some of the research, that 2 may be just enough for someone like that.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is also helpful if you're trying to establish good habits would be the order at which you try to elicit behavior change on someone. So I think the exercise program is an easy sell because that's what we do. And you're ingraining a habit like you're doing with 2 times a week, or as we've kind of all been through that error process of doing too much.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying to go beyond movement, in terms of what would impact decision-making and impact how well someone can maintain habits, what do you think would be the next big thing to go after? When can't you think as clearly if you don't have this?
I'm going to say sleep.
Yeah, 100%. Well, so, I mean, think about it. It's like you aren't going to do much of anything if you are sleep deprived. How well do you think your nutrition program that you want to give someone's going to go if they're sleeping 5 hours a night?
Mm-hmm.
Well, 1, they're probably not going to get as good of changes as they could get from that program. And 2, they're probably not going to be as consistent with executing it.
So I guess leading off of that, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Have you attacked sleep first then? Have you almost jumped over the consistency of the exercise program? Just what I'm hearing you say. Have you targeted, like, kind of when I look at it from a precision nutrition lens, you know, you find that solid habit that you want to start with. Have you almost been putting sleep as that first linking habit before the consistent program? I mean, obviously if we can get someone training consistently, but have you kind of been 1A, 1B, or has there been one that seems to have taken over the other?
I think just because of my job, the exercise program is the first one to give, because that's what they're coming to me for.
Okay.
But once we have that established and they're pretty consistent, I might start, jabbing them a little and say, hey, how you sleeping? Are you blocking light at night? Are you getting sunlight in the morning? And it may just be one habit at a time, because most of the people who you work with, if you ask them how they sleep, they will say atrocious. And they're up for if you give them something very simple that profoundly impacts their sleep, then like it's just a domino effect. Mm-hmm. Like I had a woman, I was seeing her when I was in Page America, and she hasn't slept through the night in years. And I made one suggestion. I said, why don't you turn the temperature down in your house? Because I went and saw her at her house to 67. She called me 2 days later and said, Zach, I slept through the night for the first time in my life. So like however long. And so it's just like these habits are very simple to execute. But if you can get someone sleeping on a regular basis, then I think they're going to be more prone to, or they're going to better follow through on other behaviors you may want to change for them.
Yeah. Okay. Or if, they're going through like a very stressful period in their life, maybe like dial down, like, the amount of exercise that they're doing within their program.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just looking through my list. People were sending me some as we were going. I should have turned my phone off too. Coming back on, I was trying to find what I was looking for too.
Key tests.
Yep. There
Systems as well.
Yep. Systems. Yep. That's where I was working my way down. So systems. What are you? It doesn't have to be just for training, but even in your overall process of your model online, what have you done efficiency-wise?
Tell me a little bit more what you mean by that, because I think there's a lot of different things that I use. So are you talking about?
Let's say this is more of the technical side, scheduling, bookkeeping, things of that nature. Just, I know for your inquiries have probably increased exponentially over this time. So
Yeah.
I know one of the big things has been, how do you keep track of those things? So one, you're not missing emails or potential clientele.
Yeah.
While also making sure that the people you're already currently working with are being serviced to the fullest degree.
Mm-hmm. This is a complex one because there's a lot of moving parts to this. So when I first got back into being online after my time in the league, I had a little bit of downtime to try to set up some systems. So I y'all read the book 4 Hour Work Week?
I haven't read it the whole thing.
Coach Bo, guess who's got some homework?
Looking down on me now.
I'm not looking down. I like that in the show. But that book made me think a lot about how can I streamline all these processes to minimize any time leaks that I might be undergoing. I mean, now I'm not perfect by any means, but that book was essential for me. So what I've created to make things go quickly was I have my form that I have people fill out that automatically goes to my email. Now, initially, I was taking those emails that I would get from the people, and I would send a replying-based email saying some of the questions that I have mentioned. For all of those, and for many of my emails, I have canned responses set up in Google, so I don't have to type the same email over and over and over again. Now I've gotten to the point, because my emails are too much, that I've actually hired someone to go through my emails for me in that. So that's another way that I've streamlined the process, so I don't have to spend time doing that. In terms of scheduling, because I know that that's on here as well, you want to do all in your power to minimize the back and forth email, because you're going to miss a lot of clients that way. And it's going to waste your time and the other person's time. So I've played with a couple things, but the best scheduler by far has been Calendly. That is just a link. You input when you're available in your schedule, and you can do some really cool things with it. I have mine set up so to where I see a person for an hour, and then I have a 30-minute block before someone can book me again. And I really like that, because then it gives me a little bit of time to send any debrief emails, reflect a little bit on how things went. That's been essential in terms of the scheduling. If there's any paperwork, I'm working on using DocuSign as well. That's the next big thing that I've been setting up for waivers and things like that. And it's just to minimize the number of steps that the clients have to take. If I send them a waiver and they have to print it out, sign it, and then scan it and put it back in, that's going to take too much time for them. I don't want to waste any of their time doing some of the needless things. DocuSign is going to, I think, be way better move, because then I'll just have all the forms. One, you fill all this out. Hey, is it Gucci? Yes, it's Gucci. Sign your name, and we'll be in business.
What about the payment system that you use?
I use Venmo or PayPal.
Oh, okay.
I prefer Venmo because there's not a fee with Venmo.
Yeah, I use Stripe, and there's a 3% fee.
Is that less than PayPal?
PayPal, in my understanding, I may be totally wrong with this, but they charge you like a per year fee.
That seems new.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It's not like I researched that myself, but I was talking to someone, and they told me the best option would be Stripe. That way, like, you can add that 3% fee to whatever you're sending them, like the invoice you're sending them.
It's I'll tell you how much it is. I'll do the math real quick.
Oh, this is great.
It's about 3% as well. 3.05 for PayPal. I haven't seen the yearly thing. If you work with international people, it's a little bit more. Something with the conversions.
Gotcha.
But Venmo for me is preferred because it's cheap.
Fair enough.
There's no fees. I mean, I can't even fathom how much I've paid PayPal, which stinks.
Yeah.
Have you found a way to keep track of that though? I know like a big thing like budgeting wise with Venmo. I know you can track expenses on the other ones, but I don't know if like, is there anything ever lost in the shuffle?
No, because I'm very anal with tracking my money.
That's I think.
I have 2 Excel docs that I run. I have a revenue doc and I have a expenses doc. Because I try to expense as many things as I possibly can so I don't have to pay a bunch of taxes. So I just have 2 Excel docs that I run at all times. And usually when someone pays me, I'll get an alert in my email. I'll help my virtual assistant write all the totals that I made for the day. And then I just look at that one number, put it in my revenue, and that's it. And I almost like, I don't want to automate that because I want to get an idea in terms of how I'm doing that month, what I can do better. And 2, then I'm like, I'm by nature a spendthrift. Like I just spend money on stupid things all the time. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how much business related stuff I've spent money on. So if I am just making myself aware of what's going in, what's going out more frequently, I'm less likely to do that. So I will make that sacrifice in efficiency to make sure I'm, not spending a bunch of money on things I don't need to. Except books. I'll always be able to spend money on books.
Do you expense those?
Absolutely. If it is anything that I could fathom as work related, I will expense it. I'm working with Ben House. He's trying to help me not bloat every time I look at food. And he's done really well. But I like the blood work. I'm going to blog on that. I will definitely blog on my experience with Ben and make sure that he gets a bunch of people sent his way, which is probably going to hate because knowing Ben, how he is. But he deserves it because he's done great things for me. But I'm going to expense the blood work in that case because that, to me, is content material that I'm going to write for that I could potentially make money off of. So, like, I'll do that. Supplements. I mean, anything that is health and fitness related that would help me perform my job, I expense. I think you justify it.
Huh. Okay.
All right, Eric, you got another one?
Yeah,
I guess for you too.
Yeah.
If you are running online, I believe you can expense your rent. Got to have you have to have a office, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my buddies told me about that he was expensing his rent. I mean, anything you could think of that is essential for you to conduct your online business or internet service, your phone. Yeah, expense as much as you can if it's helping you with your business.
All right. That's gold in itself right there. Holy cow.
I know you're going to get that from this conversation.
No.
Yeah. Tax season's coming up.
Yes. That's important.
Yeah. Actually, I do have, so I kind of modified one of the questions. Just as we were ready
for it.
I know you didn't, we're going like a remix already.
Rogue.
So let's say you have someone that's coming to you. They'd seen someone previously. They may just kind of want to tune up or something where I'm hurting, but I want to go back to just my own thing or possibly somebody else in their area that doesn't do what we're looking to do or wanting them to accomplish. How are you framing that for them that you're working with them for 2 to 3 months and then they're going to go back and experience something completely different, which may or may not be what we're looking for that on our end?
The only time I've ever had experiences with this was when I was in the league. And for those people, I don't think yes, ideally we would love to have control of everything that they do, but you don't want to ruin a relationship that someone has with someone. Like one of my pillars is social support. So if you eliminate that person from their social support, are you really doing them a service by doing some of the movement things that maybe you and I espouse. So if anything, if we can give them concepts to carry over into whatever it is they're going to be doing, and that's all that we get out of it. Maybe it's as simple as, hey, you want to make sure you exhale and you do some back pocket tucks when you're deadlifting. Then I think that's a win. But most people are not going to harm whoever they're working with, even though it might not be ideal, unless they're just completely egregious. But I think most people, most trainers are not egregious. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
No, I mean, we don't do things the same way, but we might be able to get like the same results doing something two different ways. So you can't, like, going back to what you said, I loved it because you can't just take away someone's like belief system and then send them off to that person or say that you do things better when they're working with someone else. Like, they gotta believe that what they're doing is working for them, and that's like all that matters.
Yeah. No, I totally buy it. I had a couple just previous ones where it was more of just kind of, I was there and then they had questions, and it's that fine line of, do you go as deep as you want to go to give them what you think they may need, versus how do you let them move forward knowing that you may not have them for a long run as a patient or a client. So that totally makes sense. So it's just a fine line that I've gotten burned on a couple, not in as much on my end, just because they started asking questions. So that's more of out of the curiosity of what I had. So
yeah, fair enough.
As long as, I think what you have to ask yourself, Eric, is this person situation that he or she is going back into, is that going to be more beneficial to them, or is it going to be completely maladaptive? Like, if you have a therapist who tells someone, or who has a relationship with someone where as soon as they feel any type of pain, they have to go to that therapist and get put back together, I will gladly try to do all I can to squash that, because that's not cool for that person. But if someone's going back to get straight bar gains, BARRE, if you know what I'm sizzling, like, that's probably not doing anything, but at least they're moving, and it's probably not that maladaptive to go back to bar gains.
Yeah.
No, that's perfect. That's along the lines I was thinking. So you got anything else, Michelle? Anything you want to throw out to the guy?
I think you had one question down here. I think it was actually from Chris, but I think there was actually two. Like, one was, I was just kind of curious what Zach has to say of working with maybe overweight clients in the rehab setting, and then friendships with clients.
For the overweight, how overweight are we talking here?
Chris described it to me as a level of probably, we're talking 350.
350?
350?
Like Loch Ness Monster?
Big boy.
All right.
I don't know how often it happens to you, but
in here quite a bit.
Yeah, it happens to me a decent amount too.
Yeah. So I have like two extremes. I have one woman who I was seeing who had who I saw her for some type of ankle surgery, and she was fairly large. She was definitely 350, and really nothing changed for her. So she was like she was pretty active in her job, worked at a hotel as a maid, and she had to do a lot of different things, get up and down, change beds, yada, yada, yada. So for that type of person, there wasn't much different, except I had to choose a lot of positions that didn't necessarily reinforce her being in egregious amounts of extension, because she had a rather large derriere, and good luck tucking those back pockets because we couldn't. So it was for her, and it was interesting because if we did something where she couldn't even get some semblance of a tuck, she would be getting back pain and tension from fatigue. So I had to do a lot more things for her where she was a little bit more in a forward bend position to kind of create a little bit of a hinge action during split squats or during some type of med ball throws or whatever we were doing. And that seemed to work for her. I have a woman right now who's weighs probably more than she does. And this woman uses a walker to get around, had back pain, is very sedentary, bathes once a week, because she can't get in and out of the tub. For them, you're still going after the same things. It's just everything is throttled down. I didn't really perform much of an assessment on her besides looking at hip rotation. I looked at some measures in sitting. And we just picked positions that were comfortable for her that she could drive the adaptations that I thought she needed. And she's doing really well. She was seeing me for back pain and is now pretty much pain-free. She's just deconditioned. So we're working that. So her program started with a lot of seated activities where we were doing a lot of just reaching or kicking, going after hamstrings. Then eventually I went to like a supported in her walk or squat. Now I have her doing deadlifts.
Nice.
Yeah, so she's killing it. She's killing it. And then we're doing you're seated, alternating pressing and pulling to work upper body. And it's just you find what movements a person can or can't do and you do them. And I think for the obese client, it's no different than someone like me who has limited shoulder flexion. I can't do overhead pressing because it looks like terrible even. So you have to find other ways for me to get the adaptations from that. Apply that exact same principle to someone who's obese.
All right. What about friendships with clients? How do you feel about that?
I'm not a very friendly person.
Oh, I didn't realize.
It's tough. Here in the clinic and when I'm working with someone from a rehab standpoint, I try to avoid being friends. And partly that's because of HIPAA. Michelle, say I worked with you in the clinic and, well, heaven forbid you lived in Susanville. Gosh, I wish that upon anyone. But, and I saw you at Safeway. You would have to acknowledge me first, not vice versa.
Oh, wow.
Because if I acknowledge you first, then, I'm supposed to act like I don't know you because of what the relationship we would have. Mm-hmm. So I think in clinic, it's an easier sell of keeping that professional distance. And I think training, when I was really the times that I was training where it was more in person was in the league. And I definitely would say, I wouldn't go partying with the fellas because that's just not my scene anyways. But going to grab lunch with someone, I don't think there's any harm in that. And if anything, it's going to enhance the relationship and buy-in even further. So I never saw any harm in doing that in terms of they weren't going to listen to me, because if anything, it showed that I cared about them more because I was going to give them an hour of my time to just chill.
Yeah.
And then even the same with my mentees. Them, I try to, if you work with me in the mentorship program, I consider you a friend. And a lot of times I'll just hey, we're not on a call, but let's just talk. Yeah. I have that relationship with quite a few of my mentees. And in that sense, I think it's okay because I think that's ultimately what it morphs into is we have this formal relationship, and then eventually once we go our separate ways, we become friends.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I see that a lot in the athletic world. I think people take this word boundaries too far. It's sometimes I feel like we dehumanize athletes to an extent. Yeah, of course you're not going to go out drinking and partying with them if you're a professional, but you can go grab a coffee and go to lunch and things like that and get to know them as a person. I see a lot of coaches and staff, they'll never have a personal conversation of beyond small talk or what they're doing on the field or just never ask like where they're from, like how's your family and things like that. So I think people just don't really, like, they're so afraid of like crossing these boundaries, but you're not treating people like humans.
On your end, Michelle, have you found, just from kind of how you're different in integration in the setting, that's helped you with what principles you wanted to apply into the weight room and performance and health?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, like this past year, like in person, I mean, I've spent a lot of time on the phone with like online clients, but like in person with like my athletes, I definitely found huge benefits, especially like this past year and a half of, and I'll go grab like coffee with a player before a game when we're walking to the rink or something like that. And I'll ask them how like, you know, construction on their family house is going and things like that. And I just find that like I get to know players a lot better than their coaches like ever try to. And I think it makes like a huge difference in terms of like play on the field, which is like the most important thing, because then they have someone to like trust and they have like a sense of community. And I think it builds like team dynamics. Like I'll try to encourage people to get to know each other on the team and things like that. So I've seen like a big difference when including that stuff and prioritizing that. And I don't know, I'm kind of working on something with one of my friends, Mike, of like actually like programming that throughout the year of like how are you including that with like your coaching, and actually designing some sort of like model and actual like progressive program that includes that stuff, focus on like team dynamics. Because, you know, going back to like Zach talks about this all the time, like organism, environment, task, and a lot of the things that we do are very task oriented and just only including what things that we know, which are involved with the weight room, which we overemphasize. So I think that will kind of go along with like environment, like fostering an environment that they're in. And that's probably one of the most beneficial things that you can do. Like, how much can you control? Like I see coaches complain all the time about what people are eating. Well, it's like, are you fostering an environment where you're supplying them with the right things? Like you're complaining about them being like stressed out and fatigued. Well, it's like, are you fostering an environment where like they're able to talk to someone, or including academic and personal stress into like their physical preparation? So I think that's something that we kind of neglect a little bit. And I think that's completely looping back to like friendships with like athletes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I mean, you're not going to find me on a Saturday night with them, but like I'm definitely going to go grab a coffee and ask about their families for sure.
Being a good person will get you way far.
True.
Well, I think that's
Sum
great.
it up by saying that, yeah.
Well, it's, if you want to get, people are going to buy into people they trust. And if you just keep things superficial, it becomes much harder to build that trust.
Mm-hmm. And it turns into like, I've seen a lot of that where people try to keep a distance, and it sort of kind of turns into like a fear or threat culture a little bit, because like they don't feel like they can talk to anyone and they're scared to. So I see that a lot. But anyways.
Oh, yeah.
That was great.
No, that was good.
I like that you're periodizing it almost in a way, or like scheduling it in. I mean, they make apps for that. To like, they're networking apps. Like, you haven't talked to so-and-so, and so you should talk to them. Yeah. I think it's called Close.
I used to do that in the summer. I used to mark off in my calendar, text message. I mean, I'm making up names here, so I don't say anyone's name, but like Susan, Catherine today. And then like the next week, it will be like call Zach and Sydney today. So like I would put that in my calendar and make sure throughout the summer I'm calling every athlete on the hockey team and text messaging them. So I mean, apps to tell me to do that would be nice.
They probably want Close. I looked at it for a little bit, but that just wasn't time to implement.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, if I get a random text from you, Michelle, I'm gonna know that. Oh,
It was
I must have been next in line.
It was
That must be on the Z's.
I'm a big scheduler. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah. Oh. Well, you got any other questions, Michelle? Anything else we can throw at this guy?
No, I really liked the half kneeling and standing propulsion assessment.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna go tomorrow and mess with those, and kind of create like points where I would look at, and so I can kind of share that with other people. I thought that was awesome. And the revenue expense documents, that's money.
You want me to share them with you? Do you want me to share them with y'all?
Oh yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do that. Let me make sure I take off all my consistent revenue. I mean, I like you guys, but
Show all that money you've been embezzling, just trying to build that wealth.
yeah, like Tony Montana, you know?
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time, Zach.
Thank you both for being here.
Oh yeah, Zach, this is great. I answered a lot of questions and
Awesome. Well, I like this too because it was just a little bit off the beaten path. Here, I'm going to stop recording. Keep real, but nothing except when things go wrong. Stay hungry, stay learning, stay moving, and we'll see you next time. Can you give a deuces, Coach Bo? Can you give deuces, Eric? Boom.
boom.
Love it.